So you got the text, I think, and do you think that you will have time to go through the Surah 9 this afternoon and to read it carefully and to prepare some questions about it? I would like that spontaneously you react to this text and that you write just what you think about it without any kind of theoretical elaboration or something like that. Just, how do you receive it? You reject it, you accept it, you understand what it says, and also the second question, you start from your spontaneous reception. The problem of reception is very important. And what I call the spontaneous reception is the immediate reactions you have to the text according to your own system of values, because each individual has his system of values with which he perceives and he interprets. So each one of you has his own training, his own cultural references, his own philosophical references. You have definitely an idea about how to react to a text like this, so do that spontaneously, don't control yourself. And second thing, which will be more critical, ask yourself which relevance this text might have or has in the present Arab societies for someone who is working in the field of development and management in these societies, where this text is definitely present. It is definitely present. This cannot be denied. It would be irrelevant to read this text today if it was not present. It's not just because it is in the Quran that we read it. We read it because it has a topicality in the present time, in the present societies, with the social actors and a great number, an increasing number of the social actors with whom you have to deal. Whatever is the sector of the society in which you are working. This is the problem. So please react on these two levels, and I ask you to write down your reactions that you don't forget it. And we should share it tomorrow. Then we can have a kind of seminar, in the proper meaning of a seminar, where all people are working together and exchanging. It's not only me bringing something and you listening. No, we are colleagues, we are social actors, all of us. And let's share what we have to share about this important issue. So we shall do that tomorrow.
So we look at it within how it's related to the development process.
To the problems, the general problems of the contemporary Arab societies. And which kind of interest someone who is working in the field of development in these societies, which kind of contribution he can make in this field, taking into account the presence, the impact of this text, especially in the present societies.
In March this year, I have participated in the Interfaith Conference in Germany, and we used the same surah to its implication of that on peace.
Yes.
And how something was developed.
Yes. Yes. Yes, it is, I know, it is, that's why myself, but I have a definite position myself about all the issues related to this surah, especially because, as you say, it is used in the interfaith dialogue today. Because Christians are bringing themselves this surah, because as you will see, there is a verse 5, which is called the sword verse. آية السيف بالعربية. آية السيف، سيف قطع راس، قطع الرؤوس تطير. نعم، آية السيف. ويقولون إن هذه الآية نسخت 175 آية في القرآن. نسخت هذه الآية، آية السيف، نسخت الآيات السابقة. إذ هذه السورة من الأواخر التي نزلت، لأن النسخ والمنسوخ مبني على تاريخ النزول. فهذه الآية نسخت 175 آية في القرآن. هذا just this. But I anticipate. Tomorrow we shall discuss this, but please, I need that you are involved in this exercise. It will be more interesting if you commit yourself in the problems, major problems, many problems, which are related to this. And my contention is that this kind of approach, this kind of text, is absolutely related to the problems of development today in Arab societies and in non-European societies in general.
Can we talk about the Islamic society, or we have to talk about the Arab society?
Here we are officially in an institution which is meant by European community as an institution to address, if I am not mistaken, I'm speaking under the control of the dean of this institution. It is meant to study the problems for the future policy, let's say, or cooperation between European community as a new political body and what we call, although it is, as I said yesterday, not appropriate, but we refer to something existing, Arab world, or let's say Arab societies. So we limit ourselves to what the institution is meaning by this institution in which we are working. And I think it is very appropriate and very relevant, because the Arab societies are representative of global issues concerning similar societies which have been considered and labeled in the 60s and 70s as the underdeveloped societies.
My question was that I want to your combination of the Arab and the Islamic, because whether we look at the Islamic thought or think whether it is facilitate development or hinder development, right, is question also there is other Islamic societies like Indonesia, the Southeast. There is a lot of talk that one of the factors that they are much better developed in economic terms is because the way that they look at Islam, right, in a very general way. And that's an example that we are going to see how I can believe this. Is that right?
Yes, this is, yes, we can study the issue further with other examples like Indonesia, but Indonesia in itself is a so complex society, so complex and rich example, that it needs to be considered apart. We cannot, as we do very currently, approach the issue under the umbrella of Islam. and say Indonesia is a Muslim society, its majority is Muslim, then we apply the paradigm to this society. This is a very mistaken approach.
But that's the debate is already there. Last week.
Yes, but we have to manage these debates and to say how to clarify this situation. And my position about this is that Islam as a general paradigm applies to very, very different societies, like Pakistan, Indonesia, Turkey, Indian Muslim community, which is 120 million people by itself, although it is not an independent state and society. All these are examples which need to be examined in itself, because they are too complex. You cannot approach it under the same umbrella of Islam. Otherwise, you are going to generate categories which are totally wrong and irrelevant. And hopefully, social sciences try to be relevant somewhere and precise, not to create these monstrous categories. It's a monster, which is created especially by all the literature on political scientists when they approach the issue of Islam as they do. The famous article of Huntington making all this theory about the clash of civilization, using wrong references to the civilization, which he says that they are going to clash. So wrong. His references in this article, which is mentioned all over the world, insistently, by social scientists, by political scientists, by all kinds of actors, political actors, etc. It's based on wrong references. And these references, especially on Islam, are based on some excerpt from Bernard Lewis.
I think personally I would be here and
So let's stick to the Arab example. It's complex enough in itself, and it has special relevance to the European issues, as I said yesterday, because Arab societies, Arab history, Arab culture, Arab thought cannot be separated totally from European history, from European thought, from European categorization, I would say, of human existence. They have something to do together, because they refer both to the same symbolic background, the same categorization of law, whether law has a religious origin or a profane secular origin. This debate is inside the Arab societies and the Arab thought. It's not because we are overwhelmed by the fundamentalist religious position that we have to forget what has happened in the Arab thought. Arab thinkers who wrote about the issue. So it's a relevant example for the confrontation between the European model and the absence of model, at least working model, although there is an imaginary model. You see how I put it? There is absence of model, operative model in Arab world. All the models operating in Arab societies since 19th century are borrowed models from outside. But there is a model in the imaginaire social of the Arabs. They have always references to the imaginaire model. That they have one, but this one, they cannot use it because there is imperialism, there is colonialism, there is all this who impeach them to use it. And there is this struggle in the mind that they are obliged by their history to borrow models from Europe, but they label this model as an imperialist one, as a colonialist one, as a dominating one, and they would like to have their wonderful model, which is in their imaginaire, but they cannot do it because the United States don't want it, Europe don't want it, etc., etc. This is the reality. This is the struggle in the mind. And you have this ongoing discourse of victimization, historical victimization of Arab societies since 19th century. They are victims of the hegemonic history imposed on them by Europe and now by United States. But this has to be analyzed again as the product of the imaginaire social. And you see here how necessary it is to introduce the concept of imaginaire. Because these representations and these struggle between the non-existing model and the mental model, which is in the heads of the great majority of Arab people, especially since the Second World War, the end of Second World War, is the characteristic of the driving historical forces in these societies. And how to describe and imagine the model which is not operating, which cannot operate. How can you name it? How can you describe it in a rational discourse? It can be described only in the terms of the imaginaire representations. That's why we cannot avoid this concept. Like a psychoanalyst, when he receives somebody who has problems as an individual, he listens to him, and immediately he discovers all this struggle in the personality of the person who is talking to the psychoanalyst. And the psychoanalyst makes this distinction between the imaginaire and the way the person is representing the reality. And this we have to use in our understanding of the social reality in Arab societies. Of course, what I'm saying can be applied to English society, to French society, to German society. It's not only for these societies, but the scale. There is a problem of scale. The scale at which the social imaginaire operate in Arab societies, especially since the emergence of Israel in this part of the world. Very important. Here we can put Israel, the example of Israel. Yes, because we are in the analysis of the imaginaire. We're not doing politics. I mean politics, day-to-day politics. But to explain what is happening at the level of the social imaginaire, since the emergence of Israel, and since this struggle for independence, Algerian war, and all these things which we went through during the 50s, and all the subsequent history until today, all this belongs to the realm, the psychosociological realm of the social imaginaire. We cannot describe this with any kind of rationality. But the discourse of social sciences, which is a discourse elaborated, used by social scientists in Europe, for Europe, for European societies, and for industrialized societies, this discourse of social sciences is pretending to produce always a rational discourse about rationalized societies. And here you meet the problem of management. The principle, the epistemological principle of social sciences applied to European societies since 19th century. The epistemological principle is that these societies are managed. When I say managed, managed politically, managed economically, managed educationally, managed culturally, are managed in the full sense of management according to rational principles. That these societies are all rationalized. They do not obey to uncontrolled driving forces of mythologies which are addressed to the imaginaire. This is the epistemological foundation of social sciences. And you see here how we have to make a critic of the epistemological foundations of the social sciences, especially sociology, which is responsible of all the devices, I would say, used by management, economic management, marketing, functions, diverse functions in the society, etc. Here is a critic, a radical critic of management. As a functionalist, purely functionalist activity, disregarding, neglecting, rejecting to the unthought. We don't need to think about it. All the problems of epistemology, which command the kind of knowledge produced in these so-called rationalized societies. This is the heart of the issue, if you want to speak about management. There is no way to approach management in the sense I defined if you don't address properly these radical issues. As I put it, for the critic, the general critic of social sciences, Now, if this is correct, it's up to you to object and critique it. But that's why I say, if this is correct, then what about Arab societies? When we have the ambition to lead these societies and to manage these societies with the so-called knowledge produced by social sciences as it has been produced and meant for the European industrialized societies since 19th century. It is an immense problem because it doesn't apply. Because all the forces and the ingredients existing in European societies do not exist yet in Arab societies. To speak only on the laboratories, Where are the laboratories to produce the technical knowledge which is produced only in these developed countries? And the laboratories mean the scientific social tissue in which all the members of the society are involved to produce this scientific knowledge and to participate to enhance the level of understanding and the level of managing in the societies which are put up in different levels in the same time. This doesn't exist in Arab societies. Historical knowledge, for example, is totally lacking in Arab societies. And the historical knowledge plays a role, a big role, an important role, a decisive role in managing societies. So this is, I think, a long way to go, and I hope this experience which is engaged here, if it can address these problems at that level, really, it will jump in this horizon 2010, 2020, to generate really a consciousness of what all of us we have to do to generate this new concept of management, which would address problems in European societies as well as in these other societies, which will then participate to the same historical movement in managing societies today, and appropriate each time the methods of management to each society, taking the society from its historical level. The historical level of Sudanese society cannot be compared to the historical level of Tunisian society, for example, to stay just in the same sphere. There are differences. And then, if we engage really a struggle, scientific, intellectual, of course economic struggle, in that way with this conception, then really we can bring something through this institution which can, I hope, it can grow in that way.
Can we before we move to another subject, you mentioned the term rationalization. I just want to see that in Arabic we know the al-aqlaniyya. But I don't want to say because I want to see what's your definition to rationalization or rationalism.
Yes.
Because in Arabic aqlaniyya, even when we do something, we use also the al-aql. استخدام العقل حتى في تفسير الحاجات الأخرى.
Yes.
Are we not rationalized? Or what do we mean by rationalized?
Yes. Yes, it's not understood. You are right, it's not understood. To approach this question of rational, irrational, rational, imaginary, these are distinctions that we have to make in the activities, to understand the activities of human mind. The problem is the activities of human mind. We are taught that human mind has several faculties. Faculty of memory, faculty of imagination, faculty of reason, faculty of intelligence, and a lot of interpretations and definitions have been proposed. What imagination is. What's the function of imagination compared to the function of reason? Does reason function in its own sphere without any interference with the sphere of the imagination? is the product of imagination a product of knowledge which is reliable, on which we can rely to say that it is a positive knowledge that we can use? Or should we say that the product of imagination cannot be considered as a reliable knowledge? We have to be careful about it because it's made of representations. You see the number of questions which we have to raise. And when we go through the history of psychology and philosophy, Aristotle dealt with these problems already. Plato has based all his philosophy on the creative imagination, which is similar to the poetic imagination. And the philosophical discourse of Plato is based on the mythos, not on the logos. More on the mythos than on the logos. The logos, the mythos has something to do with the creative imagination, more than with the logos as a reason which uses logical categories with demonstrations and definitions which Aristotle will do, giving a preeminence to logos over mythos. There has been a discussion already with Aristotle and Plato about the opposition between mythos and logos. And we find the same opposition in the Arab context, where Arabs discussed all the knowledge produced by reason in the Aristotelian concept of logos, using logic, using categories, using rhetoric for demonstrations, etc., etc. There are thinkers who gave this preeminence to reason understood in the Aristotelian line. But you have another line, the Batini line, al-ilm al-batin, which is based on symbolic knowledge, on the mythical knowledge, in the line of Plato. And there has been a struggle in the Arab context between the rational knowledge, which is based on logic, categories, etc., Aristotelian line, and the mythical knowledge. And we make this opposition, especially the Ismaili has been called the Batini, because they have developed this kind of knowledge based on symbols, myths, etc. So it is a long story. But now we have added a category which is psychologically different from the categories of logos, mythos, and reason and imagination. This new concept is the concept of imaginaire, which stands in between the product of reason and the product of the imagination. The imaginaire is the, I would say, the place in the mind where we receive images about reality. We perceive something and we make an image of it. This image is received in this in-between space, which is the product in the same time of a kind of rational knowledge and a kind of imaginary knowledge. And these images, these representations can be used by reason as well as by imagination. It will depend on the kind of culture in which you are going to operate. If you operate in the culture of 19th century in Europe, where reason has not only positive reason, but a positivist reason, then you will say, as Europeans have said, all knowledge on the side of imagination has to be suspected. It's not rational. It belongs to the primitive societies, the archaic societies, the religious societies, the traditional societies, etc., etc. And we have the big debate between tradition and modernity, the recurrent debate, based on this opposition. Because reason decided that only the definitions made by scholars, by reason, will provide a reliable knowledge. Imagination cannot provide a reliable knowledge. It can provide a poetic suggestion for personal experiences, but not a reliable, controlled, technically produced knowledge. And you see that we have here a kind of philosophy of reason and a philosophy of imagination, which has been enforced and used in the scholarship produced in Europe since 19th century up to the last 50s. And this model is still operating in European perception of other cultures, and it is fully operating in European perception of what is happening in Muslim societies since the last 30 years and 40 years. The perception of the so-called Islamic societies by European system of interpretation of cultures and societies is all on the side of the social imaginaire, fed by the media, fed by the political scientists' literature, fed also by the type of historiography which I mentioned, produced by Orientalism about Islam and Islamic societies. It's a lot. And this is nourishing the social European perception of these type of societies, especially since the last 50s, 60s, etc. And we are in it, entrapped in it. Who is going to bring a clarification of this European imaginaire, which is daily nourished by images, terrible images, coming from Algeria, coming from Lebanon, coming from Iran, coming from Turkey, coming from Bangladesh, coming from so many come every day. Images. The images are received by this psychological receptacle. You say it? Receptacle. I cannot pronounce it correctly. Receptacle, which is the social imaginaire. And when the social imaginaire is structured by the accumulation of these images, then the social imaginaire becomes a driving psychosocial force, which will generate political trouble, which we witness with the positions developed by political parties in Europe about the immigration of people coming from these societies. And also, if we look to the Iranian Revolution, The Iranian revolution has been possible with the Shi'i imaginaire fed by the representations of the legitimate Imam throughout history of Shi'i Islam since the murder of Hussein until today. The murder of Hussein, celebrated every year by all social forces in Shi'i societies, is nourishing the social imaginaire, not any kind of rational understanding of Islam in the Shi'i tradition. So you see how important is this category of the imaginaire as a historical driving force. And this historical driving force, I would add, is even made more active and more revolutionary, more important and more devastating by the demographic factor. The demographic factor. Why? Here we come back. Here. If you want to understand something and to manage something in Arab societies today. The unprecedented demographic evolution of the third world societies in general, the Arab societies in particular, since the last 50s, has created a totally different scale of all the problems of development on which we are speaking. Because the population since 1960 until 1990, the population has tripled, not doubled, tripled in 30 years. This is an unprecedented historical event in human societies. And this factor is not considered enough. Because this factor has structurally changed the sociological basis of ideologies. When I say ideologies, it can be nationalist ideology, as the Nasser Arab ideology in the 50s and 60s, which was socialist and secularized, not religious. The Nasserian Arab nationalist discourse was secular. It was not religious. The Ba'ath discourse of Michel Aflaq and his successors is secularized, not religious. This also is a dimension of the present situation. The shift from the nationalist secularized discourse to the so-called religious discourse has happened during the 80s, the last 80s, and in these 90s. But the vision of both discourses, nationalist secularized or so-called religious, both discourses, this is the most important. Both discourses are addressed to the social imaginaire. They are not, the one is not addressed to any rationality because it is secularized. This would be the mistake, and it has been the mistake, to label this against that. Both the nationalist one has been a driving force for the social imaginaire. Not any level of rationalizing activity has been engaged in this discourse. On the contrary, all has been concentrated, focused on nourishing the social imaginaire. And the same social imaginaire now is fed, fully fed, overfed, I would say, by the same discourse, with the same categories, with the same type of perception of history, by the so-called, I insist, religious discourse. But we are in the realm of social imaginaire. There is no way to introduce any type of rationalization. Here I said oral culture, which have been described and known as popular culture for a long time. Popular culture. Yes, populist is this. Popular here with P capital and populist with P minor, small. The concept of popular culture has been used for a long time, since 19th century, by colonial ethnography. Or, I should say, I corrected yesterday, the ethnography based on the philosophical postulates of positivist reason as defined by Auguste Comte, the French philosopher Auguste Comte, who made the distinction between the theological stage, the metaphysical stage, and the positivist stage of the history of human mind. You see? There is a theorization, a historical vision of the steps of reason through history. The theological one, medieval ages and before. The metaphysical one, from 16th century to 19th century, and 19th century positivists. The true scientific, rigorous, rational knowledge, excluding any type of mythical knowledge as being non-reliable knowledge. This is written, no, as a philosophical statement. So, the popular culture has been labeled as such popular by the learned culture, produced up. And this happened in Europe, but it happened in the Arab societies too. In Arab societies, this theory and this opposition between learned culture and popular culture is phrased. It is phrased in the Quran itself. When the Quran speaks about the Jahiliyyah society in negative terms, that it is a society based on wrong values, which have to be eradicated, which is based on shirk, polytheist beliefs, which has to be eradicated and replaced by the ahsan al-qasas, the true narratives which provide human being with true knowledge, which is the ilm. The word ilm is repeatedly used in the Quran to elaborate a concept of knowledge, which is a knowledge related to the teaching of God in the revelation. And the rest of knowledge related to the previous societies and cultures will be disregarded, will be minimized, marginalized, and, if possible, eradicated. And you see how the category of Jahiliyyah society is resurrected and reactivated in the Islamist movements today. Inside Egypt, for example, التكفير والهجرة and others have based their approach on the concept of the Jahili society and the Islamic society. And you see how the categories operates between the learned society, the societies of the book, and the societies without book, polytheist societies, and without books. See the difference? Without book and without books, which is popular culture, which is minored, minimized, and hopefully eradicated, to be replaced by the learned culture. But I should give you, but for an anthropologist, as I said, popular cultures are the very coherent cultural codes which made the human societies existing and surviving for centuries and centuries. The popular culture played a positive role in sustaining the life and the survival of the major part of all societies, because the learned culture is the culture of the khawas, of minorities living in the cities. It is not the culture of peasants and nomads, which are called the awam, the masses in Arabic categories, as well as in European categories. If we imagine the English society in the time of Shakespeare, what a discrepancy between the cultural, the elite's culture and the culture which we label as popular culture. And the popular culture produced very positive cultural works and values. We have no right to discredit it, as we did in this dialectical tension which characterized the historical evolution of all societies. But still, now it is working in Arab societies. Yes, please.
As a Westerner, I have no problem differentiating between the Quran and what I consider is Islam. And I think what happens with the dialogue between Muslims and the West is the Westerners are very, very clear in their mind. They know that the Quran is revealed from God, the Word of God. They consider a text, a religious text, written in a certain time and space. And there are tenets of Islam too. But when a Muslim speaks to the Westerner, a Muslim, all he talks about, or she talks about, or quotes, is the Quran. And for Western it's very confusing, I think, because if we don't accept the Quran as the divine world, revealed word of God, then we don't hear anything about Islam. All we hear are people quoting, I said this I think last week too, people quoting the Quran. It's to me like I'm quoting the Bible to you. It doesn't bring much weight. What I'd like to hear somebody explain how what they quote in the Quran relates to what is happening in Islam throughout the world, or throughout history.
Yes, yes, it's true what you said. We shall come back to it, yes.
Follow up, Jim. I think that it seems to, whereas Westerners rely on our human experience, and then do that as the basis of whatever the quoting situation, this seems to be replaced by the Quran, which I'm not making a value judgment for me. But what it does is it creates a gulf between two different societies. It's very difficult to jump from something that is religious, while at the same time the Westerners are trying to see it from a secular point of view. And so I think that creates a wide gulf, which, because of the very nature of the dialogue that's going on, creates immense difficulties for the two different societies to communicate effectively.
Yes. Yes. If I had added the question, which difference you would see and make between the Gospels and Christianity, between Bible and Judaism, would it have been clearer for you, or more suggesting more, especially for those who are not Muslims? Westerners. I don't like this terminology. I don't like this terminology because I'm beyond it. I don't like it at all. But we have to use it. Would it have inspired you another answer?
No, it'll produce another answer. It sounds like a different question. But very good.
It sounds like a different question.
Sounds.
When I add this.
Well, you also wanted to give a different answer. That must be a different question.
It is a different question.
Yeah, after the program.
You receive it as a different question.
Why?
It provokes a different answer.
It provokes a different answer. This is interesting. You see?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I was thinking of it through your answers. The answers we got to my question. Because so far I didn't get an answer. You didn't answer at all. That's why I thought you should have added this. Have a question. Maybe it. Okay. Yes. Yes. Yes.
I'm trying to say before.
Yes. Okay. You. Yes. No. He asked you.
If I were to answer spontaneously to the question, I would say as being a product of.
Louder, maybe.
If I were to ask spontaneously to your question, first on the spot, I would say that being as a product of an educational and psychological system in our country, I would say that there is no difference between Islam, the concept, and the Quran.
Yes.
Because I always understood that the Quran, or the Quranic text, or even the text which was produced by the Prophet, is support to Islam. It's a document, it's support to Islam.
Yes. Which is correct. All Muslims are educated like this. Unfortunately, I would say. Yes, please.
I feel now that Islam is beyond the Quran.
Beyond?
Yes.
In which sense?
I know. Maybe the Quran is one outcome or one activity, an don't know how to define it, but of the Islam, among many others. But I really cannot, I'm really still confused, in Islam there is the Quran and other things, but what these other things are, and still, so the Islam is not only the Quran. It is the Quran plus
yes, let's go, I don't know. Now, if you have answers including, yes, you have something? No, you didn't raise. If you have answers including my second question, yes, please. She didn't speak, yes.
For me, it's like Quran is a part of Islam, but Islam encompasses a lot of other things like philosophy, the thinking, the intellect, a very wide scope of things. And I think the big problem of the big religions today is that they have all, I think Christianity as well, I think that's why there's so many criticisms of the church. They are trying to remain static. And I think Islam, like any other religion, has to be able to be applicable without time barriers. And as it is now in the Muslim countries, as you said, we stopped in the 10th, 12th century and we haven't moved on. And I think this is what is limiting Islam and the thought and the imagery of the other cultures and other religion on that.
Yes, so you are saying that Islam developed as a kind of a narrowing of the horizons opened by the Quran. Is it your vision? The vision you are expressing? That the Quran has opened wide horizons. And Islam, as a historical process, has narrowed these horizons or has forgotten some of these horizons.
I don't think it's Islam, I think it's the Muslims.
Yes, I said Islam as a historical process, which means the historical process is the process due to Muslims as actors. Yes, you see how difficult it is to elaborate an answer to a question which at the first approach seems to be simple. Seems to be very simple. Yes, now, yes, you didn't say?
I think we can say that Islam is a thinking process of building the city.
Yes.
As Arabe did when he thought about the Medina Father.
This is Islam?
Yes.
Yes, and what about?
We are inspired by the Quran.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
En ce qui concerne, j'ai toujours pensé qu'il y avait deux grandes subdivisions de la religion musulmane. Il y a la rohaniya et l'akhlaqiyya. Pour moi, le Coran, il servait beaucoup plus au côté rohaniya que l'akhlaqiyya. L'akhlaqiyya, je dirais qu'elle puise beaucoup dans les hadiths que dans le Coran.
Oui, alors il faut peut-être expliquer, we must explain, he uses two words, ruhaniyat and akhlaqiyat. Ruhaniyat is the spiritual realm, or the spiritual sphere, and akhlaqiyat is the behavioral sphere, a pragmatic sphere, with some ethical norms. Akhlaq is linked to ethics. It is the behavior of people according to ethical norms. Ethical being different from spiritual. These also are differences which are not clear in many of our discourses when we speak about these issues, spiritual and ethical. It's not as clear as it should be. Yes, is there something to add to what has been said? I want that you become conscious about the lack of tools. If you don't have tools to approach the issue of religion as an existing obstacle in the contemporary societies, I'm not speaking on religion as a normative system to give us norms to behave correctly, to behave ethically, to behave spiritually. I'm not considering religion in that horizon, in that function. This also may be a confusion in your mind. I am considering religion as a force in the society. And the force is complex, because it is a driving force which affects the deepest psyche of the individual. And through the deepest psyche of the individual, it affects the conscious part of the individual. And what emerges to the conscious part of the individual is very few, is very narrow compared to what affects the psyche. We have not access to the impacts of religion on the psychic structure of our personality. I don't know if you understand this or not. It is a psychoanalyst distinction between what emerges to our conscious and it seems to us that we know it and we master it, and eventually we can command it and we can decide freely by our reason on what emerges on the level of our consciousness. But we do not consider the impact of religious teachings, not only religious teachings, but the religious ritual impact, the ritualist impact on our body. Because religions affect our body through rituals. Ritual, rites, manasik. This dimension of religion is not taken into consideration when we put it only on the level of teachings, of principles, of norms, of beliefs. Because this is a side of religion that should be considered. Because it affected our psyche through a very long time. And even when religion is shifted to a philosophical secularized expression, or to a secularized ethics, like we say now in Europe, still there is the impact of religion through this so-called secularized ethics. All this is not taken into consideration when we speak about religion. Yes, before I start, yes.
I think that this can be said. I can see the force of what you're saying when one thinks of somebody who was brought up in a religion.
Yes.
We often say that if you're brought up as a Catholic, you'll be a Catholic all the rest of your life, even if you're a lapsed Catholic.
Yes.
In some part, you never know, you
Yes.
can't get rid of it.
Yes, because of this, yes.
Do you think this is also true, presumably not, for people who are converted to a faith, who often cognitively hold their faith very strongly?
Yes, they are converted superficially to a ritual, but they are not converted in their psyche, in their psychic personality. They are not converted. And you have a wonderful example with Garodi. Garodi has been a communist in the Stalin concept of communism. He has been a member of the Comité Central of French Communist Party during all the 50s until 60s. Then he converted to Protestant, or he was Protestant initially, I don't know. He came back, let's say, to religion. Then he converted to Islam. But the structure of his thinking and his mind and the way he thinks, etc., it didn't change. He changed some vocabulary and he changed some ritual behavior, maybe. I don't know if he prays or not. But the basic structure of his way to think and to express himself didn't change. No. Now he speaks spiritually. He doesn't speak the Marxist language. The vocabulary has changed. But the way of thinking and the system of thinking didn't change.
Yeah, the question you asked us concerning the difference between Quran and Islam made me think about two other questions. First one is, can one be a Muslim without accepting everything said in the Quran? And the second question, is there any difference between having faith in God and believing in God?
Yes, there are two. Yes, these are two questions which cannot be correctly answered and taken into consideration without a clear-cut answer to the question as I put it. Which kind of difference? We have to recognize, we have to define and make consciously clear for each individual between the Quran and between Quran as a concept and as a given corpus of texts. It is a given corpus of text, body of texts, and what we call Islam currently. And the confusion has been developed by Muslims as well as by Christians, as well as by Jews, as well as by all religious communities. A confusion has been made and maintained and reproduced through the educational systems. Confusion between the two, as he said, for Muslims, for Jews, for Christians, thinking inside the tradition, there is no way to separate Talmud from Judaism, Gospels from Christianity and its various expressions, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, etc. Quran and Islam with its various expressions, Shi'i, Khariji, Mu'tazili, etc. This is the way. A tradition has developed our perception of these two phenomena. Let's call them a phenomenon. In Greek, a phenomenon is something which is manifested before us and which raises issue, and we try to understand what's this which emerged before us. There is a difference between using Islam and Quran, Gospels and Christianity, Bible and Judaism. I should say Talmud, but because there is, the problem of Bible between Protestant and Jews and Catholic, it's also a big issue. It's a big issue, not clarified. many struggles, many divisions, many claims, many etc. It's a field of confusion, a great field of confusion. It is different, great difference, between repeating what traditions have imposed on us, not only through the teaching of norms and beliefs, but do not forget, through rituals to which our bodies are submitted. I don't know if I mentioned in the bibliography a book by Pierre Bourdieu, the French anthropologist, sociologist, he is in between, and on le sens pratique. Did I mention it? Le sens pratique. It's a book. I'm sure it is translated into English, but I don't remember the title in English. You can find it in any library. Check under the name of Pierre Bourdieu. Le sens pratique. He develops two important concepts. The concept of habitus and the concept of symbolic capital. Habitus is a Latin word used here to point out to not only the habits developed by a teaching in a tradition of teaching, to train us to have immediate reactions through the habits installed in us by the system of education. I ask you, for example, what's the difference between the Quran and Islam? You ask spontaneously as you asked, as he answered. This is the answer coming from the habitus. The habitus is stronger than habits. Because in the concept of habitus, Bourdieu has analyzed how rituals, and rituals exist in a secularized life too. It's not only in the so-called religions. Rituals are a part of conditioning human beings. All human beings are conditioned by the habits which are embedded, put in the body. Bourdieu says, incorporate. To put in the body determining reflex. Yes. To anything which is asked from us. We react through a reflex, not a reflection. Because it's in our body. In the same way that each culture determines for our body the way to walk. Look how Africans walk, how Norwegian people walk, how French people walk. Walking is related to our culture and to the ecologic adaptation of the body to a mountain or to the plain, the plain, how do you say, Planes, yes, etc. So there is a relation that we have to study for rituals, etc. That's why it is so difficult. When I raise this question among Muslims, they are totally confused. Because he says, well, what is he asking here? Is there any difference between the Quran and Islam? Well, Muslims are trained to tell that Islam comes from the Quran. Islam is the whole Quran. There's no difference. And to introduce a critical distanciation to something which is incorporated through a long tradition of teaching which has never been touched by any criticism, which is unfortunately the case we are discussing on religions, and incorporated through rituals, then it becomes extremely difficult. And now we can add the impact of populist use of the religious tradition. Remember what I told you about populism. Now there is this populist pressure using the tools of tradition, of Islamic tradition as we call it, without knowing that this Islamic tradition used by populist discourse today has never been submitted to a critical deconstruction. We just use it as it is, as it has been incorporated already in previous generations, and we make it stronger on a political ideological level by forcing people to behave as a Muslim in the way he dresses, in the way he has a beard, in the way he has a mustache, in the way he walks, in the way he behaves when he meets a woman, if he shakes the hand of a woman or not. Look to the ritual, to the importance, decisive importance of the ritual in the present expression of the new Islam. Because intuitively, religious belief is felt as important when it is translated into rituals more than into only words. And ritual also is the most effective device to have a social control on people. This is one of the functions of the ritual. Social control, a strict social control on all people living in the society. Religions achieved a control on the community more efficient, more effective than the control of the mukhabarat. But the computer today made the mukhabarat being able to replace the control of the ritual. And the Islamist movements are very clever, because the ritual, the control through the religious ritual, is the reaction and the way to get free from the mukhabarat system? Yes, Secret Service, CIA. So you see here something extremely important and extremely relevant to analyze religious system of social control and computerized system of social control through the mukhabarat, because mukhabarat is a strong part of all the Arab regimes since the last 50s, 60s until today. And rituals is the counterpart to react to and to replace a system by another. So you see what I am asking from you. To get out of the habitus in which we are all living and to put in a critical distance all these habitus which are at work in us through the teaching we received and through the social control in which we are living today. That's why we have to start from the beginning. What's, again, I repeat my question, the difference between the Quran as a phenomenon, and you immediately, you see how you answered. You answered with the Quran and interpreting the Quran, telling that the Quran includes everything, and for the Muslim you can find everything in it. Here you are. You started inside the habitus. Your answers come from inside the habitus. And my question was intended to get you out of the habitus. Nobody in your answers get out from the habitus. Even you, when you say me as a Westerner, I am confused because of that, but still you are inside. You didn't get out because you could say by yourself, yes, the question you raise is absolutely the same for Gospels and Christianity, Bible and Jews, etc. And the problem is, and then you start an answer which would get us from the Christian habitus, the Protestant habitus, the Jewish habitus, etc. It's the same habitus. Anthropologically speaking, this is an anthropological concept. Again, you see the importance of the concept. When you use a concept, you displace. You go from a place to another. You change the place for thinking. If you remain in the place, you are not going to bring any new thinking, any new interpretation. I will put it like this. Bible, Gospels, Vedanta texts, if you want to go a little bit to visit Asia, because we don't go enough there. But we have enough to do with Mediterranean area in the sense I presented it, and with the three religions, Judaism, Christianity and Islam. If we consider what we call in religious language the Holy Scriptures, and what I call in linguistic vocabulary corpuses, les corpus, texts assembled in one volume. This is a corpus. The word corpus, when I use it, makes me free for my methodology. Already I am free. from all the problems and the habitus in which I put myself if I say the Quran, if I say the Bible, if I say the Gospels, and even more if I say the Holy Scriptures. Do you understand this? Problem of vocabulary, problems of being free from the connotative function of the language. Like when I say in Arabic, Mus'haf. When I say Mus'haf, I put away all the issues, all the problems which are raised by the concept of corpus. Because when I say corpus in linguistics, I have already a number of issues that I have to examine in priority. In linguistic field, not in theological field. If I say Mus'haf, immediately I am putting myself in the traditional presentation by Muslims of the Quranic text as the authentic text articulated by Muhammad and transcript with all the scrupulous attention to have the transcript of what actually Muhammad articulated in his time, and not to add anything, not to eliminate anything. This is the concept of Mus'haf. But all this concept of Mus'haf is based on postulates. It is not based on a critical historical inquiry about the historical process through which the corpus of text that we call Quran or Mus'haf has been actually elaborated to be what it is today in our hands. You see how different it is. The same thing holds true for the Bible and the corpus of text which are put in the Mus'haf called the Bible. It is a Mus'haf too, Bible. And the Mus'haf didn't exist as it is now in our hands. It came to be as it is in our hand now today when we take the Bible and we read it through a long process, which is a historical process. Similarly, the Gospels. It is not the authentic corpus of texts which is presented officially by the Church. Through a long process of discussion to discriminate what we call the apocryphal Gospels and the authentic Gospels. Because there are a lot of Gospels. There has been a lot of Gospels circulating. And there has been a selection by the official Church to come to the 4 Gospels received as authentic, labeled as authentic by the official Church. Similarly, there has been an official decision in Islam to say this is the official corpus. There will be no other corpus which would be consulted. That's why instead of saying Gospels, Bible, Quran, we should say, to introduce a distinction between this phenomenon and the other phenomenon, which is Islam, Christianity, Judaism, we have to say that Bible, Gospels, Quran are now for us as researchers the official closed corpuses. An official closed corpus. What does this mean? I write it like this.
Queen Elizabeth? Queen Elizabeth?
Queen Elizabeth?
Yeah.
What?
They had official status, but separate.
What does this mean? Official closed corpus. Here we have three words. It is official, it is closed. What does this mean? It is closed.
No interference.
Huh?
No interference.
No.
Interaction.
No.
You can't question it. Respect, you can't question it.
No.
Maybe change.
You see, you are not familiar with the linguistic concept of corpus. Corpus, I said, is a number of texts put together in a volume. When you put together a number of texts on a volume, you give to this volume a kind of unity. You don't put all texts in a total disorder in one volume. When you make one volume, you are intended to suggest that there is a kind of unity in all the texts you have included in the volume. It's not arbitrary. You don't put all texts arbitrarily in one volume. That's why we say a corpus. Like our body. Our body is not, corpus means body in Latin. A body of texts in English. The parts of our body are not arbitrarily put. And our body is a unit of functions. And similarly, a body of text is a unit of text. They are not put there arbitrarily. So, all the texts included in the Bible, in the Gospels, and the Quran correspond to an intention. That there is a unity to be put in one volume like they are. Who decided about this unity? Who made this process to constitute this unity which is given to us today? That we read all of us as a unity. Not only as a unity, but a foundational unity. Un texte fondateur. Un corpus fondateur. Because all people will go back to it to generate Christianity, Islam, Judaism. So this unity corresponds to an official activity. Official because it is made by the church, it is made by the rabbis, and it is made by the ulama in a given time. And these are official activities because there is an authority which controls this operation to put the text in one volume. In that sense, it is official. And in Islamic tradition, we say that Uthman, as a caliph, as a politically responsible head of the Muslim community, played directly an official role to control the process of collecting the ayat, the Quranic texts, and to put them together to have what we call a mushaf, a volume. This is the process. Similarly, the church controlled all the texts circulating after Christ, disappearance, let's say, of Christ, to be to be honest with the theology, yes, why not? They have controlled the text and selected the text to come out with the volume that we have. It's an official control. And when I introduce this concept of official, I am pointing out to a number of historical problems. Because if it is official, if a decision has been made by official authorities to include this part and to exclude that part, then we have to inquire historically about the silenced voices, the silenced witnesses to participate to the decision of including or excluding. And this has happened. For example, the discussions with Ibn Mas'ud for the Quran. Ibn Mas'ud has been one of the companions. And there has been discussions about including or not including. Similarly, there is a discussion between followers of Ali, let's say. We cannot speak yet about Shiism because it was not yet shaped as a Shiism. Followers of Ali and non-followers of Ali. And for a long time, a discussion will be carried on by Shi'is and Sunnis about the process of shaping a Mus'haf and deciding that the Mus'haf, once the authority, the church or the rabbis or the caliph, have decided that it is this, then it is closed. Closed here means that it is not allowed anymore to anyone inside the community, Jewish, Christian, whatever. It is not allowed anymore to come and say, oh, I found a manuscript in which there are verses mentioned as the verses belonging to Gospels, belonging to the book of Isaiah, belonging to the Mus'haf, etc. It's the same, huh? We have to put it like this, the same. You see here the difference between a presentation of Islam in the universities, stressing these issues only for Islam, never mentioning the issue of the corpus as exactly the same as in the other religions. Dividing the cases, separating the cases, and suggesting that what holds true for Islam doesn't hold true for the others. This is a theological, ideological presentation of religions. In Princeton University, Harvard University, Oxford University, Sorbonne University. It's the general way to teach religions. The Muslims do this, Jews do this, Christians they do this. Only in Lebanon they teach it in a very proper way. Yes, of course, I'm joking. You felt it. I wanted to make a big joke, but you took it seriously. Huh?
It would be possible to teach it in government this way.
Muslims?
You can teach this way.
Yes, anyway, yes, this is a very, very, very important issue. When I was insisting about how to teach religions, this is a point. Because we create the same approach of the same issues inside each religious tradition. And then we shift from the polemical discussions between Jews, Christians, and Muslims. We shift it to another level, where no one, Jew, Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, would say, no, this is not true. Because it's historical. It's a historical evidence. We proceeded all in the same way. And the concept of official closed corpus cannot be rejected by anyone in the three communities. This is an encompassing concept. It is not a dividing concept. It is not a theological concept. It is not an apologetic concept. It's another tool, precisely to address all the issues which have been accumulated in each tradition, which have been taught again and again through centuries until today. We have special private schools for Jewish theology, special private schools for Catholic theology, special private schools for etc., etc. I can continue. Where tradition is taught, we say Talmud. We don't say official closed corpus. We say Gospels. We don't say official closed corpus. And of course, we say Mus'haf. This is no problem, because at least for Gospels and Bible, a lot of critical studies of these corpuses has been made since 16th century. They started in Europe. This is a big difference. But what has been made in scholarship is not yet included in the theologies. This is the problem. The studies are there, it's done, properly done, like I'm trying to present it, but when it comes to introduce it in the orthodox theology for each community, then it is not included as such. The difference for Islam is that some work is done for the history of the Quranic corpus by Orientalists, especially I mentioned the one by the German Arabist Noldeke, who wrote two big volumes about the Geschichte des Qur'ans, he named it. Geschichte, history of the Qur'an as text.
Is it in Arabic also?
It's in German. Never! Never! This book has never been mentioned at all as a book on the Quran which should be translated. When you will translate this book, you will have a terrible trouble. Don't speak of translating such a book. Written at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of this century. So this is an enormous issue. And if you want to make a distinction between what we call the Quran and what we call the Islam, you have to start from this. you have to allow historians to check with the documents and to write for the first time a history of the Quranic corpus as an official closed corpus. To give you an idea of what closed is, in 10th century in Baghdad, 10th century in Baghdad, I think 935 or 6, a reader of the Quran, al-Qurra, Qurra al-Quran, Qari al-Quran, the one who recites the Quran, a Qari named Ibn Shimnabuth or Ibn Shimbuth. There are two readings of his name. Recited a verse which was not mentioned in the official closed corpus, in the Quran, in the Mus'haf. He has been put to trial by a judge, by Ibn Mujahid, the great judge in Baghdad in the time, and he has been condemned for the claim of knowing a verse, knowing about a verse which was not included in the official closed corpus. The corpus was officially closed since Uthman. He has been put to trial. And, of course, no trace about the verse. No mention about the verse. Similarly, historians say that after the Uthman decided to close the corpus, many other masahif have been burned, that nobody can refer to it. That there is only one version, which is the official version, which has to be read officially. So you see the evidences. Similarly for Christianity, historians have discovered other Gospels which were circulating in the time of the official Gospels, and these bad Gospels have been eliminated in the same way as Muslims have eliminated any other text which would be presented as a text to be included in the corpus. This is the meaning of closing the corpus and watching any attitude which would say, for example, what I am saying now to you. It's terrible what I am saying. It's not allowed. It's not allowed. Yes, but it's historical.
Can I ask?
You can find evidence for all this in Tabari. I'm not saying anything from my own. But as I told yesterday for the satanic verses, even if you have the evidence documented in historical books, you cannot tell it because it's closed. The corpus is closed and the issue is closed. There is no discussion about it. The issue itself is closed. And this is a general issue for religions. And not, I insist, please, do not make any confusion. I am not pointing out to an Islamic specific issue. No. It is the issue of compared religions. The history of compared religions. And this kind of teaching of compared religions, insisting on common issues which have been eliminated by the traditions as issues, eliminated as issues, so that we don't have any problem, no obstacle. We can read the Quran and say this is Islam and tell that Islam is the Quran. No obstacle. Because all the obstacles have been eliminated. All the problems have been eliminated. For example, in the Gospels, to add something very important to the issue of the closed corpuses. Jesus of Nazareth, there's a difference, Jesus of Nazareth and Jesus Christ. When we say Jesus of Nazareth, he is a Jew, a member of the Jewish community, a rabbi maybe like others, involved in religious issues. He was speaking like other Jews inside the synagogue, like Luther will speak inside the Catholic Church to initiate a new movement, the emergence of a new position about the same issue, which is the issue of revelation of God, etc. Jesus of Nazareth has spoken in Aramean language to the fishermen of Palestine of his time. He didn't speak in Greek language. He spoke in Aramean language, which was the language of the country, Syria, Palestine, of that time. What the disciples did, they translated all what he said in Aramean into Greek language. And the Gospels have been written in Greek language, transmitted in Greek language, not in Aramean language. This is a terrible thing. Because going from Aramean language, which is a Semitic language, like Arabic, like Hebrew, like Syriac, to a Greek language with its vocabulary, worked out with the philosophical vocabulary of Plato, especially, and the Platonic tradition, is shifting totally from the semantics common to Aramean, to Semitic languages, to a system of language which is Indo-European system of languages. It's a shift of civilization and culture. So here we have the evidence of a corpus which has been officially closed with this big shift from the Aramean language to the Greek language. And this is one of the first cleavages between what will become the Oriental Christianity and the Western Christianity. The Western and Oriental is already there. And it will become deeper when the Catholic Church, using the Greek Gospels, will come to Rome with all the Latin, Roman culture, law, and civilization, in which the first step of Christianity will be made, of Catholic, what will be the Catholic Church. So you see how history will play a role to create a new world of culture and meanings with forces and factors and inputs which have nothing to do with the first emergence of what we call Christianity, Islam, Judaism. Because in Islam too, there is an enormous difference between the first historical step of the Quranic phenomenon, which in the time of the Prophet has been an oral delivery, not a written delivery. There was no corpus. There was no written text during 20 years. The Prophet was speaking like Jesus spoke, like Moses spoke, orally. An oral delivery. And the oral delivery is totally different for the meaning from the written delivery. Totally different. No comparison. This is studied by linguistics, for example, here. I'm speaking, you are looking at me, as I have been told by the video, I think it is there somewhere. She told me, you are not speaking only with your words, you are speaking with the hands, with your face, with your voice, because sometimes it's high, sometimes it's down. This is called in linguistics the discourse context, the discourse semiological context. Delivery of meaning is not only through words, it is through the whole body. The way I utter sentences, the gestures I make are adding a meaning, a context to what I'm saying. Every time the Prophet recited a verse, he did it in a context. He did it in the mosque, he did it in a walk, during a walk to a place to another. He did it sitting after a long walk under a tree to have some rest with people in different circumstances. And each circumstance was accompanied by a semiological context. All this disappears. The video, of course the video they will see, but suppose that it was taped only with, how do you call it, a cassette?
Audio cassette.
Huh?
Audio cassette.
Audio cassette. Then all this will disappear. But still there will be the voice. Here, once it is written, the voice disappears. The articulation disappears. And you see here the number of issues about the meaning of a discourse which will be considered afterwards for centuries as the ultimate obligatory reference to decide about everything, as you said. Everything is in the Quran. But it is in a silent text. It is not anymore in an oral, alive discourse. This is dead. This has disappeared forever. So you see the differences between what the Quran is, what the Gospel is when we consider it in its first emergence, and what religions, Islam, Christianity, etc., are on the basis of the references made to the written text, not anymore to the oral discourse delivery. It makes a lot of differences. But we accept these differences, and we say Islam is the Quran. Because we have eliminated all the problems When I say a problem here, I say obstacles to use a reference. Normally, we have no right to use these references in these conditions, but we do it. That's why the product of this procedure to use silenced voices in the text as it is. A text is a silenced voice. And when we read only the text, we have all kinds of interpretations, and in these interpretations there is the input of the social actors as I defined it before, and we are creating something more and more different from the original reference. The original reference being first the oral discourse, second the written text in a corpus. If you accept all these differences, then there are consequences for managing, I come again to management, for managing in a society problems related to management. You have asked what Islam says about management. How can we go through the problems of management when Islam is asking, requiring from us this and this? When you use the word Islam, you were postulating that Islam is rooted in the Quran. The Quran is a holy book. The Quran is a revelation. Then all Islam is a revelation. All Islam is a holy religion. And Islam then has to be respected and applied as such. But all these are postulates. Either you accept to go to the critic of all these postulates and say, I cannot work like this. Or you go through the postulates and you change totally the rules of the game, and you change totally the rules of thinking about management for our contemporary societies. Of course you will tell that this is too complicated for me, I don't want to get through this, I let it, and maybe I understand, I agree intellectually, but it's not possible to do it. Maybe you will tell this, you will tell me. After a break, you will tell me what you
How many years ago
It's from 632 to 656. 656. Osman died in 656. So
we are around 13, 14 years.
Yes. The vocabulary translates as strategy for knowledge, a strategy for critical knowledge, not a strategy for accumulating and uncriticized knowledge. These are two procedures that are used in all our societies, more or less used in the societies. In the present Arab societies, the accumulated uncriticized knowledge as a way for knowledge is much more used than the criticized terminology for another intelligibility, for a new approach of knowledge itself. This is what is at stake in choosing a vocabulary instead of another. So, I repeat the issue. We should not have time, unfortunately, to go through it. But the issue again is the new concept of management. If we agree to go all together for a new concept and a new practice of management, not for the present society only, but for the societies that we would like to generate and to build on other bases than the basis used so far. So, if we want to go that way, and we want to include the humanist dimension in this concept, then definitely we need to have a critical approach of all existing cultural systems. All existing cultural systems. And when I say cultural systems, I include in each culture the religious dimension. Because there is no one example. There is no one example in the history of cultures. There is no one example of a culture which developed without the impact of a religious dimension. Doesn't exist. No culture without the impact, the deep, lasting impact of the religious dimension. Which requires from us to reintroduce the religious dimension, not as a return to God, as a return to beliefs, as a return to spirituality, as a return to values which we have been lost because of secularism, because of economism, because of the wealth, because of secularism, because of all. This is the prevailing ideological use of religion today, even in secularized, urbanized, industrialized societies. The return to spirituality, the return to ethics, the return to God, etc., etc., as if we have achieved a critical survey of the values, of the spirituality, of the traditions, of all what is claimed to be a solution today for our crisis of values, for our crisis of civilization, etc., etc. As if this is what is happening. So it's not to go back or to let things coming back, to let God coming back after we say that God is dead. He was dead and he comes back. He's resurrecting. We go to religions, we take interest in the religious dimension to evaluate historical situation in which all societies are engaged, which is the globalization not only of economy, but the globalization of the mechanisms used in cultures to generate meaning. Yes, this is the ambition of social sciences. Maybe not affirmed like this, not explicited like this. But the control, the cognitive control of social sciences on the meaning we are producing is developing the same ambition as the hard sciences, mathematics, physics, biology, etc., which are generating a global knowledge and a global standardized methodology to get to a universal knowledge. Here also you see how we need to problematize, to present as problematic, not as given, the issue of globalization, the trend of globalization. We seem to accept it as something which is good, which is leading us to a unifying way to live together in peace, etc., etc. This is dangerous. We have to problematize this trend which exists and which is linked, very strongly linked, to management as the management of the technological side, the technological tools, the technological search for going on in a type of globalization. That's why there is a critique to be made to management inside this trend of globalization, and management for another way to go in something maybe which would not be necessarily called and labeled as globalization. We don't know. We have to think about. And again, all this picture I'm trying to present, me, as I have my field, which is the history of religions, history of thought, not only of religions, by of thought, because as you see, I include history of philosophy. And I include it not in a Western way only. I remind you with this, because it's essential too. I add a dimension which the Western history of philosophy has so far neglected, marginalized, and not integrated precisely in the new context of globalization. Because the context of globalization is new for all societies linked to a state nation. We developed cultures and civilizations related to state nations in such a way that we raise always this issue, which difference, for example, in the English training for thinking, for building a scholarship, for developing a knowledge, and the French way to do it. We are raising always this question, or German, or Spanish, etc. Or now we say Islam. Islam also has his own way to produce knowledge and to shape knowledge, etc., etc. There are these ways because they are linked to the state formation. And each state creates constraining ways of thinking. Each state creates political functions in which intellectual functions are introduced. Intellectual functions. We are discussing, for example, the concept of imaginaire. I would like to understand, we would like to understand, why English scholars, why English thinking so far didn't produce neither a translation, okay, it's not necessary to produce a translation, but at least an equivalent of the French elaboration of the concept of imaginaire, which is a cross-disciplinary concept. It has been elaborated in psychoanalysis by Lacan, discussing himself Freud, in all the rich realm of psychoanalysis. It has been elaborated by Jean-Paul Sartre in a well-known book on l'imagination, in literary criticism. It has been elaborated by structuralist thinking, structuralist school, with Lévi-Strauss, with Roland Barthes in literature, with a type or a line of Marxist thinking in the 60s. It has been elaborated by historians, especially the school of medievalists, French school of medievalists, Georges Duby and Jacques Le Goff. These are serious people, serious scholars. And you see how it comes from different directions. On dit l'imaginaire de la société médiévale. Looking at the medieval society through the concept of imaginaire. How rich it is. How to neglect it. Still, our colleagues in English sphere, of course they develop things which are related to images, representations, etc., but they do not use this encompassing concept, which is a tool to be differentiated from irrationality. It's not the same. It's not sufficient to speak on irrationality. It's not sufficient to speak on ideal types, as Max Weber did. It's not sufficient to speak on images. It's not relevant to speak on imaginary, as we do in English. It's not relevant. Nothing so far is relevant to the realm of knowledge and the strategy for knowledge, for the history of mentalities, which is open by the use of this concept, not in an abstract, speculative, theoretical way, but in a concrete analysis, for example, of the historical documents speaking about the medieval society. And there is no way to approach any religious thinking, any thinking related to religion as a system of beliefs and non-beliefs without using the concept of imaginaire. There is no way to do it unless we keep speaking on religion with the so-called rationality used and produced in theological thinking. Because the rationality produced in theological thinking is precisely a rationality falling on the part of the imaginaire, not on the part of the criticized knowledge through a rationality which would be itself critical rationality can be labeled and produced as rationality while it is. When you analyze it and deconstruct it, it is the imaginary, the imaginaire. It's a cognitive concept. How to explain then this? I lectured in many universities in America, in London, in Germany, etc. When I tried to discuss this issue with colleagues, they just disregard it. Some of them look at me with great disdain. Just disdain. Speak. We don't mind. It reaches this level. So there is a problem there. You see, I give you what is happening, and I don't know how to solve the problem and how to. I am not making any value judgment to say that this is better than the other, but I would like to understand from our English colleagues what can replace this, what can we do to introduce at least this approach and give it the dimension it deserves, what to do. My feeling is that the pragmatic attitude about knowledge in Anglo-Saxon sphere is prevailing in such a way that there is a kind of satisfaction. We are satisfied to know things as it is presented, and we do not know, we do not need to theorize so much about what we know practically. And we know better practically than we may know in engaging speculative discussions in theorization. Maybe I am not giving this as an explanation. I have just the feeling of this. So I don't know, how do you feel yourself, especially those of you who are in this English sphere. But you see how we need precisely to focus on cultures, but to focus on cultures as closed spaces. I call it closed in the sense I defined, because it is closed politically, the state-nation. And this you can see. Look how England is reacting to the European community as a new construct, a new political construct, on the basis of its own tradition, as a nation, with a long history. Look how they react. French too, they react on their own part very strongly to the construction of a European community. This goes back to the problem of closed spaces in which, politically closed spaces in which cultures have been elaborated. And we are opening up the frontiers, political frontiers, and by the way, we open the cultural frontiers. And then, if we focus on the cultures again, we have to start this new inquiry. This, I hope, now is clear as a move. I'm presenting this as a move. And the move, it's my belief and it's my contention, this move cannot be made without a move in the teaching and in the practice of management at the level presented by Francis Fukuyama. You know the name, Francis Fukuyama, who has written this book about the end of history.
The reason I raised the questions regarding the French school of thought and Anglo-Saxon school of thought. Because I'm not sure that you are aware of the thing, of what we are doing here as participants, right? We are using the material, the material of the Open University in England, and it's based on the Anglo-Saxon management school management of thought.
Yes, I know. Yeah, this I know.
That's what we have to do, the adaptation to the material, which will be more or less to be related to our Arab and Islamic management that we go to mention. And that's why I'm saying, because the concept of culture and the concept of the concept of culture and the humanistic part, the individualism, what we concentrate in the British culture and the Anglo-Saxon is as a constant one, the individual is the important. And that's when also has an implication on the way that later on we go to do the adaptation, because it's based on Anglo-Saxon thought management.
Yes. Anyhow, there is something which I think is sure and on which we can have an agreement. I think. This is the necessity to have a compared approach of this material as it is given in the Anglo-Saxon line and the material which is given in the French line, the material which is given in German line, the material which is given in other cultures which have strongly contributed to these issues, not only practically, but theoretically, which of course has to consider also the Japanese line, because they contributed. Japanese. Now the Chinese line. Can we speak about the Arab line? About management? I don't think we can. I don't think we can. But the existing contributions, all the existing contributions, and for me, a contribution should have reached a theoretical level, where issues of knowledge, issues of constituting cognitive systems are at stake. Then there is a contribution which we have to consider and to compare. Not to use as a model, a unique model, but to compare, to go beyond. You understand what I mean? So I mean by that it would be, I think, dangerous to rely only on one type, one model. This would be dangerous.
That's what we're doing now, and that's what we raised last time, that first of all, if we talk about, when we talk about Euro School of Management here, and talking about the adaptation of the material, we do not talk about the Euro. We talk about the Anglo-Saxon School of Thought.
Yes, I understand.
Yes, and we did, even the instructors like you guys who come to support us, we did not have French. We did not have German, which will be so, well, that's not.
I am not defending French. I'm not defending a model.
Me too, I'm not defending, but that's what I'm trying to say.
I'm asking that precisely in the context of globalization in which we are all engaged.
Yeah.
It is absolutely unacceptable from a strict cognitive point of view to work inside a prevailing model. Unacceptable. It's not a matter of accusing this for being blind, not etc. No, it's not a matter of accusation. It's a matter of facing the issue of globalization. How are we going to face it? And definitely there is an hegemony. Who doesn't want to go to Harvard School, Business School, or Stanford's Business School? Everyone would tell you Stanford Business School, if you have this, you are on the top. Stanford Business School. This is hegemony de fait. It's a fact. And we have to be aware of this and to not go in a model. I'm not saying that the model in Stanford is not good or something like that. I would like to know how it is, how it works, and to compare it to others. That's all what I say. Like for religions. It's exactly for religions. Religions are models to produce human existence. Islam is a model to produce human existence in a way. Now today we have the chance to look to these religions as models, as codes, to code human existence, to put human existence into a code. But I know that there are several codes for producing my existence. It's exactly the same. This management Anglo-Saxon is a code related to a given historical development, like Islam is related to a historical development, like all other religions. It's codes. And I approach it as a code. I do not approach it as a model for cognitive, definite and unique and standardized cognitive system. This would be a major mistake, and I don't think that this space, which is just created, should go that line. I hope not. I hope not. Yes, please.
Now, I'd like to ask Rashid and other people that are working in Morocco in different schools and universities, what sort of materials are they using at the moment? Are they using American authors? What would I be using?
French.
Because I think this is happening. They're using French materials, which.
But this is not a solution, unless you here as a team, coming from French sphere and from English sphere, you do this work of comparing, and comparing in a critical way, that you come out, you as a group, with a kind of manifest. We as a group, we worked at this Euro-Arab university. We confronted the two models, and these are our conclusions. This would be your job. Because this space, precisely, is giving the chance to people coming from different models to confront their models. But if you are just listening to what the English is saying and the other listens to what the French is saying, and everyone keeps working and thinking in his own sphere, you will not do the job, and you will not create here in this institution, which is new, you will not create a new space of intelligibility, which we need. You will just put this institution in the line of the institutionalized ignorance. Although it is just open and it is meant for creating something new. So be aware of this, and you can, I urge you personally, I urge you as a group here, with your experience here, at least to write something about this, to raise the issue, and to express strongly the wish that it should go that line of comparing, of confronting, of contesting, and of building something which would lead to this cross-disciplinary approach of management. Yes, please.
To be fair to what we're doing, we were told in October, when we were giving the Open University materials, that one of the ways to adapt them is to look at what's presented in an Anglo-Saxon sphere and to compare what actually happens in the Arab world, and to contrast what happens in the Arab world.
Yes,
that is basically what we're doing with the materials.
Yes.
It's a step towards this.
Yes, but this, you have to discuss it. Please discuss it. Because as it is put like this, it's not relevant.
Yeah, it's not.
Because there is nothing coming from the Arab world today to contest the model, to discuss the model. You are just asking, as we say it again, a kind of marketing to see how the model produced in Anglo-Saxon management, how to make it working in the societies as it is.
But this depends on us.
Huh?
This depends on us, how we adopt. I mean, they don't raise a cultural.
Yes, but if you do not discuss the model which you are taught, and you do not discuss, as we tried to do together this week, what the Arab societies are today, to bring this management in this society. If you don't discuss both, then you're not doing the job. You don't do the job. And not only you have to discuss both, but you have to start from discussing the models, the prevailing competing models inside the Western sphere, including Japan. Because Japan has something to tell. I don't know if it's good or not, it's not the problem. I have not any prejudice, good or bad. But definitely Japan is there in the competition. And they have a management. No one would say that Japanese economy does not have a management, what it is, and how to evaluate it compared to the American management. Again, if we take seriously the concept and the trend of globalization, there is no way to proceed otherwise.
Even if we talk about the concept of Europe, not just globalization, we are, as to go on the same term you use, the problem of the semantic. We use the term Europe, while in what we are doing now, that's my own understanding, we use it just, and Western, is it just, we refer to the Anglo-Saxon school of thought management.
Yes.
And I did raise this question, and we said that we just want to see the school of management. The German, how do we do things? The French, how do we do things wrong? And like us as an Arab later on, we might also be discovered now, after the models, that the way we do manage things in Jordan is different than the Lebanese, is different than the Moroccans, right? And then we might sometimes come to broad lines of talking about Arab management. But until now, we're concentrating based on the Anglo-Saxon thought.
Yes.
Even the people who we recruited to run this, all of them, they have the Anglo-Saxon background.
Yes.
And that's the first time I've been in my life to be exposed to people who have French thought. Because in Jordan, we have an English school of thought and American. I went to the LSC, the UCL, we are English. For the first time, and so I want to see that what is the
yes.
And also, when you say global, you see Euro-Arab, it's not global. It's Euro-Arab.
Yes. No, this is understandable, because there is when you look at the world in a geopolitical approach, there are spheres where relationships develop according to the history of inside the sphere, to the geography inside the sphere. There is definitely a space to be worked out, to be taken up into consideration, which is the Euro-Arab space, approached as a historical space. It is a historical space. You cannot approach the Euro-Arab space as you would approach, for example, the Euro-Chinese space, because you don't have all the historical references, cultural references, religious references that we have in the Euro-Arab sphere and that we do not have in the Euro-Chinese sphere.
But Europe did more investment in China than the Arab countries.
Yes.
It's,
Okay, but this is one dimension. That's why there are differences, because the historical relationships between Europe and the Arab world have something to do, some role to play in the development of a management adapted to that sphere. There is something to manage there. If we agree again that management is not only for economy, investment and all this, but a global management for global cultures and global societies. And global geopolitical spheres. Because another sphere would be the Euro-African sphere, for example, sub-Saharan Africa, because there are problems there which are different from the Mediterranean sphere. If we think in terms of historical spheres, and not only in terms of economic spheres, that's why I have written a paper. I didn't bring it. I see that I should have. Maybe I can send a copy. It will be distributed for you, which I entitled Europe, the West, and Islam. Has three historical spheres which I try to differentiate. And especially, it is necessary to differentiate the concept of Europe and the concept of West. To differentiate it culturally, historically, and then for the strategy today, when we work with tools coming from Europe or coming from what we call the West. The West in terms of management, in terms of economy, in terms of technology, includes North America and Japan. This is the West. In terms of economy, in terms of money, in terms of technology, which is a lot. Then in terms of management, let's say in the classical concept of management. In the existing concept of management, in the working now concept of management, not in the concept that we want to create. This is the West. Because from this concept, the cultural, historical dimension is excluded. It's not taken into consideration. When I say Europe as a historical space, I cannot exclude the dimension of culture. There will be more Europeans resisting to the exclusion of the historical cultural dimension than if I am thinking in the sphere of the West as I defined it. So this makes a difference. If we are thinking in the concept of the West or in the concept of Europe. And when I speak about Europe to Europeans, and I speak to Europeans about the Mediterranean dimension of European culture, no one European would deny. Because Europe has a long history since the Roman Empire, not only medieval ages, since Roman Empire was including the whole Mediterranean and Europe. The conquest of Alexander the Great was spread until India. And it is Mediterranean culture which spread in all Europe. So we have no right to make a confusion, total confusion as we do, between the geopolitical, geo-economic concept of the West, which is prevailing because of the primacy and the priority given to a way for profit and as a way for power, we cannot confuse this with Europe. Especially this Europe, which is now crossing a major step again, as Europe did in the 18th century, by going to the European space and not anymore staying in the concept of state nations and closed civil societies related to nation states. Look to these moves. And when now we introduce the dimension of Islam, facing the West on one side and Europe on the other side, which is the face which is playing an important role in the reactions of Muslim societies since the end of Second World War. It's not Europe. It's not Europe. Islam is facing the West, not Europe. Not Europe as a geo-historical and geo-cultural space. Islam would not face Europe when, of course, Islam would know its own history, as I say. But Muslims do not know their own history. That's why they may confuse, and they are confusing Europe and the West. And Europe on its side, in spite of its historical dimension, medieval dimension, etc., Catholic dimension, Christian religious, etc., long history, they perceive Islam as a danger, as a threat, just like the West, because Europe does not know either about Islam as a historical dimension. They know only about Islam as fundamentalist, fanatic, violence, destruction against the West, etc., etc. Confusing all the time. Semantic disorder. This is the semantic disorder, which goes until confusing in the heads of Europeans the concept of the West as it is since the Second World War and the concept of Europe itself. If Europe is in a semantic confusion, what about us who suffered from so many forces which we didn't master? It's normal that we are more confused when we see how Europeans themselves are confused and confusing us. So these are I think the...
It seems to me that the people who organise this seminar perhaps fall into that confusion that you're talking about. Because they very often have the feeling that what we're actually talking about, like Rashid was saying, is Western methodology and Western concepts, rather than, so what you've been saying about the whole cultural unity of the Mediterranean and Europe has not been touched on at all. It's not really, has never been projected as part of the project. It's always been expressed in terms of one methodology, one way of looking at the world against Islam.
You are absolutely right. It's absolutely normal. The design of this space, the intellectual design of this space, carries the confusion I have just mentioned. It is confused in terms of the West as an hegemonic economic, monetary and technological space. It is not designed, although it is from Brussels Commission. It is not designed according to a European concept with all what I told about Europe and Islam. I had the chance to give a lecture to all the people responsible in the Brussels Commission about precisely the issue how to approach Islam Europe and the West. I developed in their presence these ideas. All the heads of departments in Brussels, Commission. You were not there? You were in Brussels?
Yes, but I wasn't there.
You didn't hear about it? Yes, because I did it in French, but they asked me to do it in English another time because many English-speaking people there didn't attend because they didn't master French enough. You see, language again. And those present, and there were many, about 400 people came to the lecture. They listened and they agreed with the presentation, like I am telling you now. They agreed, but in the same time they feel helpless. They feel helpless with this issue. Yes, they confess it. They are helpless because they are engaged in such a bureaucratic system, and they are facing such terrible issues, starting with languages itself, that they feel helpless how to proceed to change the mentality, the mental approach of Europe as a new political, cultural, historical space, to differentiate it from the West, moving in the line of economic hegemony, monetary hegemony, technological hegemony, which generates power, and more profit. It's a problem.
And I think that's what Max was with designing this program, according to him. And I think really it's a joke to say you have to learn this and this and that. So that's what he thinks.
Sorry?
Who?
Max.
Max Boisseau?
Yeah. According to him, we have to learn this and this and this and that. But he's not even an expert in this. And he has to say you have to learn this and that. And I think it's a joke.
We have to learn anyway, but to learn how and to do what with what we learn. But first, to learn how and what, you have to raise the issue. But it's up to you. He said this, okay, because he's working himself in this big bureaucracy. But you have your own approach of it, and you put objections, you raise issues, and you discuss it. I think it's open. It's open for discussion.
This is a biennial project. It's a biennial project. Nothing is done, fixed or finished. So it's the first initiative, and so it's open for approving, for development.
No, but they didn't consult us for nothing.
We are doing this. I mean, we can add to this.
I think this.
Our role to contribute and make this program in better position.
Yes, I think you can lead yourself to this consultation.
Why do we have PLC for?
Because you are here, it's your responsibility to lead to this. Take it as your responsibility. Because you come from different countries, and hopefully other teams will come more diversified than you are. Because here you are some Moroccans, one or two from Lebanon, one Palestinian, I think you are Palestinian. One Egyptian, it's not sufficient. And of course, from European community, from European countries too, it should be balanced. It should not be only Arabs. From different backgrounds, from Spain or European community. And it should be a space for confrontation, not confrontation to yes, for exchange and for searching and dealing with these issues, how to proceed, because it's new. It's a new experience. And you cannot do this in all the institutions. We cannot introduce this. Because all the institutions, they have their own habits, their own program, their own staff, their own etc. And you cannot do these new things in all the institutions. You cannot. That's why we need new spaces for this. And this is a new space.
It's interesting that Maxwell has always been involved, in fact, in developing an alternative method.
Yes, that's what his paper shows.
It might be interesting to see some kind of an alternative model could be developed in the Arabic context.
Yes, but in the time being, it is naive to ask this in the present time of the Arab world. It's naive because there are so many problems, so many difficulties, so many obstacles that it is naive to expect that a model or a relevant thinking can be produced in societies where we have such terrible economic issues, problems, difficulties. How can you do that?
Chinese are one of the problems.
Yes, we look to Chinese, but...
Well, as I said, I think as us as participants, we did realize that there's a difference between us as people dealing with, as measured from their laws, that there are differences.
Yes, of course, there are differences.
But what I'm trying to say, I'm not sure that I agree with what Mohammed is proposing, saying that, well, it is a pioneer, it is a pilot project to the pioneer stage. But I felt personally the recipe from the beginning is not. The recipe did not look at, when we talk about Europe, look at the French school of management, the German school of management, or the Gaelic school of management, and the Islamic school of management, and the Anglo-American school of management. Even I won't say Anglo-Saxon because Austria have now been affected more about the Pacific development. So we are more or less looking at the Anglo-American. And the recipe from the beginning, if it is not being opened. So if I do, when I did comments last time on that, I'm not sure this is the definition of standards is a French one. I've been told we'll leave this now and we don't want to look at it. I'm not sure that the standards of the French, the way how they define standards of quality, it's a little bit different than how the German has to do it.
Yes. No, there are differences. There are differences. The problem is to look whether the differences reach the level of philosophical issues and cognitive systems issues, because then it becomes extremely important or dangerous when it reaches this level. If it's just differences of proceeding without leading to deep consequences on cognitive systems, then okay, you can make mistakes, you can lose the market or gain another market, but this is contingent compared to the consequences at the theoretical level. Because there are, in each type of management, there are philosophical implications. There are definitely philosophical implications. In each type of management, you are going to choose and enforce in a given society and a given economy. Like each economic system has definitely philosophical consequences. And these philosophical consequences are not evaluated when you build your economic system and when you put your economic system at work in a society. Nobody spoke about the philosophical consequences of the collectivization system which has been enforced in some Arab countries in the 60s and 70s. Nobody raised the issue. We decided that it was the way to go, that it was very beneficial for the underdeveloped societies, that these societies needed to go very quickly towards an economic development, and that's it. And look to the philosophical consequences. Look to blood, which is the consequences. Blood that we are facing, violence, political violence, is the direct consequence of the way chosen for development, so-called development. Now we see it. We wait until the catastrophe comes. Okay, we have been mistaken. And I say always there should be a court to bring people who made these decisions to the court. Yes, it should be a court. There should be a court. There is a sanction for this. And for those who decided this, I have names in mind. For example, we had an economist in Algeria who was the advisor of Boumediene when he was deciding the theory of industrializing industry. Industrializing industry. There is a concept. The leading key concept of the whole policy enforced by Algerian government in the 60s and 70s, which is totally ideological. And you had management, and you had economists, and you had technologists, and you had experts, and you had everything coming from European societies and working, and Morocco and Tunisia were watching Algeria as something which is a model. I remember Moroccans having a kind of childish admiration for this revolutionary model. And Moroccans were looking to themselves as traditionalist people, entrapped in tradition. You remember? You are young, maybe. You are young, too young. I don't know. You remember?
One of the things, the consequences which I felt it now, it's an informal discussion, is that why we can't have Tunisia and Mauritania have to have more participants? And one of the questions is they say, but the problem with those countries, they speak French. So we cannot later on.
What do you say this?
Well, I mean, what I'm saying, that's not a problem, because there is not very much.
Yes, there is this problem.
Yeah. And I just discussed it, and then I said, okay, fine. And then in other words, right, as some of our local friends last term will say that if we want to talk about Euro-Arab management, then we have to look at the material to read in French. And because those people from Mauritania, a lot of Moroccans.
Yes.
Euro-Arab management school.
Yes, I was astonished by that, because when I talked with Mr. Boisseau, when he asked me to come, he told me that please don't bring any French material. All should be in English. I was prepared to bring some, at least titles in French, and I put some French titles because I knew that there are some Moroccans who would benefit from the titles in French. But he said that all the material should be in English. He said it, yes. No, this, you have to raise the issue. To say that European community is yes, French, Italian, Spanish. Of course, we are not going to speak all these languages. We have to choose a language for working, just for working, but this language should be prepared to absorb, for example, the concept of imaginaire. It should absorb some concepts coming from Italians, coming from Spanish, coming from, I don't know, if Greece can contribute.
We have to learn also from the Middle East and Morocco.
Yes. Yes. No. We have to choose a language for working, because otherwise it's impossible. We cannot have interpreters and all this. We have to choose a language, and as long as it will be like this, I mean necessary, we have to choose a language. And this language should be a linking language. A linking language.
Anyway, the French reaction, they started now. French is one level for them. And then later on, they get another one in Morocco.
American-based.
It's the French to reaction one, yeah.
Yes, I know, it is French. They speak French, but
Yeah.
It's not the first one.
Right?
It's not the first one.
But then it is a reaction.
Okay, then, I think myself, I enjoyed being with you and talking to you. I don't know if you yourself benefited from what we tried to do. Anyhow, I hope that you will try to bring to more confrontation, to more discussion. Yes, to try to open up this space and that it can become something which we need anyhow.
I think that you are coming to this hotel in October, that you are coming to attend.
Here?
Yeah.
I don't know. Who told you? I don't know.
There's a rumor.
A rumor, yes. I would, yes. It's nice to be in Granada. I like Spain and I like the group. Yes, I like, yes.
And next time you'll answer me about the civil society.
Yes, it's a big subject. It needs, yes.
What's the word? Ridda.
Pardon?
Ridda, you know Ridda, right?
Ridda, apostasy.
What's it?
Apostasy.
Apostas.
Yes, it means rejecting your religion. Rejecting it, declaring that you are not anymore a Muslim or a Christian or apostasy. Ridda. Ridda means returning to. You return to your paganism. It was a word used in the beginning of Islam for Arabs who we came back to their ancient system, to the Jahili system, Ridda.